Mr. Chris Philp.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm very grateful, as always, to the Honourable Member for North Antrim for securing this important debate. It is relevant, of course, to my ministerial responsibilities, but I should add that my first formal paid employment at the age of about 16 was in a supermarket in South London, very close to my constituency, so I greatly sympathise with some of the issues being raised. And in fact, I also subsequently, years later, ran a business which supplied convenience stores up and down the country, so it's a topic that is also close to my heart. I'd like to start by saying very clearly that any form of retail crime is completely unacceptable, and I completely agree with what the member for North Antrim said about the importance of emphasising that this is a serious form of crime and it should not be at any point dismissed or treated by the police or anyone else as something that's somehow minor or that can somehow be disregarded. It's important because shop workers often get assaulted. It's very serious for them. The Honourable Member for North Antrim pointed out the enormous financial losses that result from widespread shoplifting, and it also, if left unchecked, simply escalates. And what might start off as pilfering or what some people would wrongly describe as low-level theft can escalate into something much more serious and much more widespread. And in fact, we've seen this elsewhere in the world. I'm thinking particularly about San Francisco, where both the police and store security guards appear not to intervene, and in other American cities as well. And as a consequence, stores are raided and are stolen from on a large scale multiple times a day. And in fact, in San Francisco, a number of shops have had to completely close down because shoplifting has become so rampant and so out of control. So for all of those reasons, this is something that does need to be taken, I think, extremely seriously, and is a very compelling case for doing that. Now, this government does take it seriously. I certainly take it seriously, and so does the Home Secretary. In fact, just a couple of days ago, I chaired a meeting of the National Retail Crime Steering Group. I think it was on Monday, bringing together the retail industry and law enforcement to sharpen our response to retail crime. It was attended by, amongst others, the British Retail Consortium, the Association of Convenience Stores, representatives from all kinds of retailers, as well as people from the Police and Crime Commissioners were there, as well as various people from the policing family. And we discussed a number of things in that meeting. One of them was looking at the impact of Section 156 of the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Act 2022, which made assaulting a public-facing worker, particularly retail workers, but others as well, like people who drive buses and so on, making that a statutory aggravating factor where those assaults occur, which again is designed to send a signal to the public, but also the police and the judiciary, that this is something that is taken very seriously. Now, we discussed a number of points during that meeting. We also considered an article that appeared in the Times over the weekend by Dame Sharon White, who's the Chief Executive of John Lewis, raising concerns about this. And one of the things we talked about was the need for a proper police response at all times when shoplifting occurs. Now, it's worth, the Honourable Member for North Antrim mentioned resources, and of course across England and Wales we now have more police officers than at any point in history. We have 149,572 police officers across England and Wales, more than we've ever had before. It's about 3,500 more than the previous peak that was in 2010. So there are extra resources, certainly in England and Wales. I take his point about Northern Ireland being a bit different. But with all those officers in place, I, as Police Minister, and I think the public as well as members of this House, do expect an appropriate response. And by that, what I mean is that, proper investigations to occur. Very often, there is CCTV footage of somebody shoplifting, and we now have extremely advanced and capable means of matching those images taken on CCTV cameras against the records held on the Police National Database, and very often there is a match. That's the kind of thing I would expect to happen in every case, frankly. Where there is a lead that can be followed, I would expect it to be followed up. I would similarly expect there to be an appropriate police response where there is an incident unfolding of the kind the honourable member for East Worthing and Shoreham mentioned. I would expect the police to attend. I've seen the video that he refers to, and from what I've seen on that video, that was not the way that was handled. Was not appropriate. Where there is an incident unfolding, the police should respond to it. If the police need to attend to gather evidence that requires their physical attendance, in my view, they should do that as well. And so, and obviously the police are operationally independent. I don't have the power to direct them, nor should I. But I will be convening a further meeting with National Police Chiefs Council's leads for this area, together with the British Retail Consortium, the Association of Convenience Stores and others, to discuss this point about response, to make sure there is an appropriate response at all times, that these crimes are investigated and that they are prevented, and that there is an appropriate prosecutorial follow-up. Now, in relation to the 2014 Act that was referred to, and in particular section 176 of that Act, it's the Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act 2014, which allows, where the shoplifting relates to goods under £200 in value, if the defendant essentially pleads guilty and doesn't want to have the thing heard in the Crown Court, it's treated as summary only, so the police can, and the police, in fact, I think can charge it. That change was made, but there was categorically not any legislative requirement or indeed any requirement set out in guidance that said those offences where the amount of goods stolen is under 200 should somehow, £200, should in any way be ignored. It should certainly not be ignored.
I welcome that point that the Minister has made. I think that point does need to be driven home to local police services and, importantly, to shop owners as well. And could I ask him one further question? With regards to the group that he set up and that they're taking advice from, the points he's raised, brilliant. Progress is going to be made in these things. Could I encourage him to invite the British Independent Retail Association and the Association of Convenience Stores onto that group as well, so as the smaller business, can have their voice heard?
Absolutely. Well, the Association of Convenience Stores were at the meeting on Monday, and they're coming to the subsequent meeting that I referred to. And I'd be happy to invite the other group that he referenced. I know officials are listening, and will make sure that invitation is extended. Just to repeat the point about where the amount of goods stolen is under £200. I think my predecessor, the member for North West Hampshire, I think I've got that right, the previous police minister, did write, making it clear that he wrote to all chief constables and police and crime commissioners, making clear that section 176 does not constrain the ability of the police to arrest or prosecute. And in fact, further to that, the National Business Crime Centre in 2020 surveyed police forces in England and Wales, asking if they had a policy of not responding to shoplifting where goods are worth less than 200, and no police force responding said they had any such policy. However, which is reassuring. However, I want to make sure that the practice on the ground is appropriate. I was concerned by the points raised by Dame Sharon White, as I say, the chief executive of John Lewis, in her article in the Times over the weekend, saying that she felt the police response was not adequate, and that is why I'm going to be having these further discussions with the relevant NPCC leads and others in the near future. I'd like to just say a word addressing the point made by my honourable friend, the member for East Worthing and Shoreham, in his short but excellent speech earlier. I've touched on this particular incident he mentioned already, but he also made a point about security guards. And he's quite right to say that security guards, even though they are not warranted police officers, do have the right, under, I think, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984, to physically intervene where there is no police constable on the scene and where a crime is being committed. They can make essentially a citizen's arrest, as indeed any member of the public can. And in fact, interestingly, I was refreshing my memory about section 176 of the 2014 Act that I mentioned a second ago. And there is, when that crime of stealing goods worth less than 200 was made summary only, as we just discussed, it actually then fell outside, I think, the scope of offences where somebody, a member of the public, including a security guard, can make a citizen's arrest. And in fact, what it would have done were it not for an express provision in section 176 that makes clear that shoplifting goods under the value of £200 do still engage and trigger the right of a citizen to make a citizen's arrest under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. So Parliament, back in 2014, I wasn't a member, but my little friend was, expressly legislated to allow that power of citizen's arrest to apply specifically to shoplifting under £200. And I know we need to be conscious of the safety of security guards, of course we do, but I would encourage security guards to intervene where they see shoplifting, because if they don't, it simply allows shoplifting to go unchecked. It acts almost as an encouragement to people committing shoplifting if they think it goes unpunished. And again, I've seen plenty of video footage from the USA where store security guards there don't do anything, perhaps because people in the USA often have guns, which thankfully is not normally the case here. They don't intervene, and the problem just escalates out of control. So I do agree with my honourable friend, the member for East Worthing and Shoreham, that security guards should appropriately intervene, unless they really believe their safety is going to be a risk. They should in general intervene because it acts as a deterrent, and they have the legal powers to do so, as I've just set out in my foregoing remarks. I would also just add there are some very good technical solutions that some retailers can adopt as well to be proactive. So there is a particular company, it's a private sector company, so I won't name it, but it's a private sector company who works with a number of retail stores, including actually the Co-op in the south of England, where they've got a live facial recognition system, which is it hooks into the CCTV cameras in the retail store, including the Co-op in the south, parts of the south, and it is connected to a database of images of known prolific shoplifters. And when one of these known prolific shoplifters walks into the store, it triggers an alert so the staff in the store know that a prolific shoplifter has just walked in. And what they recommend doing is simply getting a staff member to go over to the shoplifter who's just walked in and just doing nothing more than politely saying, "Excuse me, sir, can I help?" And just the act of doing that often acts apparently as a deterrent, and often the prolific shoplifter then simply leaves, knowing that they're being observed. And they've shown me some data which shows that in those stores that have this system deployed, compared to those that don't, assaults against retail staff in those stores that have this live facial recognition system deployed have dropped. I think it was by 20%, roughly. And at the same time, in those stores that didn't have it deployed, assaults in fact went up. And in terms of theft, in the group of stores where it was not deployed, there was a significant rise in theft, part of the wider increase that we've talked about, whereas in those stores that had it, there was in fact a very slight decline. So systems like that, I think, can help. It's recently been scrutinised, this system, by the Information Commissioner's Office for the usual data protection and privacy and all the rest of it considerations. And this company has been, after quite lengthy consideration by the Information Commissioner's Office, they're being allowed to proceed. And it strikes me as an example of the kind of thing that can really help in this area. So, Member Speaker, I don't want to try the House's patience by going on too much longer, but I would just like to conclude by reiterating my agreement with my honourable friend, the member for North Antrum's point, that this is a serious form of crime, that this does cause enormous financial loss, that it does lead to many assaults on hard-working shop workers, and if it goes unchecked, it escalates to a point where just widespread disorder permeates through society. For all of those reasons, I think we need to do more in this area, and I can commit to the House this evening to doing that through the meetings that I've described. And I would like to thank the honourable member again for drawing this matter to the House's attention this evening.